with the new ventilation. For one thing, we can talk about the lack of improvement on the walls, the insulated layer at the walls, but this is a pretty compact building. It's 4 stories tall, so your amount of roof area is relatively small for the number of square feet in the building. Same with the perimeter of the building. You know, if you say the most efficient perimeter of any geometric shape is a circle, right? Because it's just the shortest circumference there. You know, this building is relatively square. It's not like it's long and skinny. It gets you a lot more exterior wall than when you have a more a square footprint. So you don't have a lot of exterior wall where you're losing heat. You've got multiple floors. I think with the upgrades that we're talking about, you can have a nicely efficient building. So anyway, I wanted to put that on your plates as you move forward with your discussions. The next thing on here was the PV installation discussion. I did get a chance to talk with Joe Kohler's partner, Dan Lewis, who's been working on the PV stuff fairly frequently lately. I also chatted with Bob earlier today, and you know, he was able to address some of the issues earlier. Typically, as I said earlier, you know, the solar component that most often these days makes economic sense, just from a black and white balance sheet sense, is the domestic, or is the hot water generation. Except, as I said, you have very little demand. So that's probably not going to work here. From an electrical generation standpoint, the numbers just aren't there yet to really make it make sense in almost any instance. And when you don't have an air conditioning load in here, I think it makes it that much more difficult. And we can get into more detail there if you'd like us to look into that and to show you how that works. On the other hand, there are some incentives out there, and if you wanted to put in a smaller system that provides some of your electricity, I think that might be possible. And there are some, I think, fixed size systems that are actually getting fairly affordable. You know, for example, there's a program out there right now that is through VPIRG in certain towns around the state. They're trying to get it so that multiple people are doing this, and this is at the residential level. And by doing so, then the vendor can actually offer a discount. And I know this because I just had them out to my house because I'm lucky enough to live in one of those towns. So, you know, with the state incentives, which is dwindling but still available for another 6 or 8 months, plus the discount from the vendor, plus the tax credits that are available to homeowners, that $20-something thousand system is available for about half price. So it starts to be a little more affordable. And just like when we said the $30,000 for to save on the boiler is such a tiny little piece, you know, is it worth $15,000 to get kind of a standard size, very simple installation, or 20 even if it costs that much to put it up on the roof? Try to size it so that it's small enough that you don't have to do a lot of roof structure improvements. You put in the monitoring system so that you can use that in your science classes. Perhaps it makes some sense. In my mind, it becomes like the pellet boiler. There are some real advantages to doing that, but it's going to raise the initial cost of the project. And at some point, that will become a paramount discussion. And we may be there already after tonight. So that's the struggle. The one thing that we talked about when you were looking for consultant and I came on board was the idea of high performance schools and a lead designation or something like that. And we really haven't gotten into a lot of detail on that, but we've really kind of segued into that with the wood pellets and the PV discussions. And it's the one area that I'd still like to explore with you, probably at our next meeting, is, you know, there's a lead checklist, and it would be good after you've had a chance to review this to kind of go through that and see how our proposed scope of work here dovetails with some of those concepts in that. We may find that you know, surprisingly, we've already hit a good number of them that are realistic and feasible. You know, and whether there's any of them that stand out of, oh, there's an opportunity that we really haven't thought about or talked about, and it can economically be incorporated in the project. I think I owe you that conversation here, and I don't want to miss it. I think we should look at that still, and that, in my mind, that's kind of the last piece to put out in front of you as you move into that. Okay, how do we fund this? I mean, I think you have a pretty good idea of how much it does or might cost. So this was a long agenda. I know I put a lot of information out there. I actually appreciate that giving me more than a week and a half between the last meeting and tonight to be able to get this ready for you. You're probably going to want to take a little time and digest some of it, is my assumptions.
Well, we're going to have a meeting, just a committee, and we're going to talk about how we feel about this whole package, and we'll have to get back to you and to get together again.
I think having that conversation at the next meeting about, you know, those points that we've hit would be good as we try and sell this, because I think, you know, those are a lot of positive things that really, yeah.
I believe there are a lot of positive things in this plan that you guys have done as well or better than most or many of the committees that I've worked with. You've been very realistic from the beginning, and yet made sure that you've hit your highest priorities. You know, and I think right off of that security issue and putting those couple of rooms down below. I know we spent a fair amount of time on that to begin with, but I think that's an important piece. And the energy efficiency stuff that is included in here, the new electrical and mechanical systems are also very important. All those things make the building much more usable and easy to operate.
I guess if you could just briefly describe that entryway setup. I don't think that the viewers really have heard about this.
Okay.
'Cause it is a major piece of the project.
Okay.
And it adds an infinite amount more security than currently exists.
It does. I mean, right now, just to orient you on this plan, this is we're calling it the ground floor, and if you're familiar with the building, it's where the doors that go into the gym are. And then there's a set of steps that go down to get into there, and on the side are those, I call them the Spanish steps from Rome, but that wrap around and bring you up to the next level, which brings you in the building at the bottom of the nice stone steps that are in the double high entryway. From there, you have to go up those steps, which bring you up to the second floor, and you take a right and you go over, and then you go into what's essentially the stairwell now, and then there's a door that gets you into the reception desk in the office. So every visitor needs to find their way first, probably like I did. You come in here and these doors are locked, so you go back over and you go up the steps. You get to the door, and there's a piece of paper in the window that says, ring the doorbell and somebody will talk to you. So you ring the doorbell, and the voice speaks to you, and you try to explain who you are, even though you've never been here before. And they, you know, ask you a couple questions, and then they let you in the door, and I'm sure they're watching and waiting for you to come up, and if you don't appear within a certain amount of time, they come looking for you. It's not the ideal situation in today's climate. So what we're proposing is that the way people really want to come into this building anyway is at that lowest level. That we come in and there's an empty, basically lobby right there outside of the gym with some blank walls on either side, and they're blank because on the other side of those walls is dirt. And it's just a slab on grade up above. So what we're proposing is to not excavate out the whole thing, because that was a lot of money, is to dig out some of that and put in a reception desk, an administrator's office down there, and in a separate kind of meeting space in that area, so that there can be a secure space to greet visitors and to have them sign in, and for the school to know who's in the building. And this will now be handicap accessible because there's no more steps. We've taken those out. We've put it in as a ramp from the sidewalk down. The floor level in this portion will now be about 2 feet higher than it is now, because when you do is you go down the sidewalk, down the steps, in the doors, through, and then upstairs either way to get back up into the gym. And what we would do is just fill that in, lower the need for the ramp outside, and it would be essentially, actually the ramp here will probably be less steep than the sidewalk in front of the building. So that's what that is.
And then, so you're taking out these Spanish stairs.
Yes.
And on the drawing on the left there, you can see the sweeping walks that would bring you in from the sidewalk along School Street and
That's right. That would
gently bring you in up to the upper level.
If you wanted to come up to that level, and that actually mirrors what was originally in the plan, or when the school was built.
When it was a high school.
Yeah, when it was a high school, when it was first
The
built.
first build, yeah.
Yep. So, sounds like a lot. It's actually a pretty simple little exercise right there. Except, well, the site work is simple. Putting these rooms in, it's, you know, that's some work. So, and that's why this room here is striped in the phasing plan. It actually encompasses both phase 1 and phase 2. And it's out of commission for longer. But there was one room over here that we said we could keep in play longer, because it's staying as it is. It's just some finishes in there, and it's off of the stairwell that we want to keep open to the students anyway, so they can get in and out of the cafeteria. So that we would wait until the very end to do that room.
Just as a thought, I don't know what others feel, is that looking at the economics of the pellet boiler, and considering the fact that this is renewable energy as opposed to oil, I think it's a no-brainer. I think the economics are compelling that we should incorporate the pellet boiler as part of the design. And then the second thing is, I do think that if there's a somewhat economically feasible way of doing a small solar aspect, particularly if we could incorporate it into the educational process. To me, I think we should look at that. We should, at the next meeting, instead of talking about it, I think we should look at what might be the cost or scope of those kinds of things. So, I don't know, that's
And
my,
I agree,
that's my,
it could be used as an educational
It's an
tool,
educational
you
tool.
know, and so dual purpose there. I agree.
And
Well, I
certainly
think-
not something, like you said, 100%, but, you know, maybe
10,
10%.
20%. You know, I was mentioning to you just a few minutes ago, a lot of wind projects now have an educational package included, which is a monitor, and it's wired directly from the turbine, so that in real time you can see how many watts are being produced, what's the average for the day, what was the average for a week in the last month, and the
Right.
students can learn.
We
You
can
know,
hook this
geez.
right up to the new science labs.
Yeah, so you could do this with the
Right.
solar and have
They
the
could-
screen that shows them what the real-time production is, and the kids could actually track it over the course of the year and then multiply it by the cost of electricity. They could do some studies in that way.
I can see that there'd be a lot of different applications within the science
Yeah.
program. And math.
Yep.
There's a greater educational purpose though, because we are trying to raise the stewards of
Yes.
the
Tomorrow.
future Earth.
Yep.
And knowing and familiarity and common use of a recycling program in the building, which we finally just gotten back on the road, and solar in the building, and conservation efforts get internalized as youth and go forward into their adult lives.
Mhm.
Right, exactly.
And there are incentives.
Yes,
I
there
mean,
are.
they're not, certainly not like they used to be, but the cost of solar panels have come down.
And they are coming down, and you know, by a year from now, it's likely they'd be even less. And if you want to talk about phasing the project, it's very difficult to phase the construction within this building. If you're putting new additions on a building, it's a lot easier to phase